Hey everyone, Hunter here again. Wanted to do a tutorial today on something that I've seen come up a couple of times on the forums and various places on the internet, and that is the use of what they call a rivet decal. For you guys that are doing body work and stuff, or trying to take a seam out of a truck's sleeper or cab, you'll know that you'll lose a lot of your rivet detail in the process of doing that. So there's a couple different companies that's come up with these decals that's really helped a lot, but as far as the decal themselves and the application of them, this is something I don't recommend for beginning modelers. It's a little too in-depth for that. You can put them on and paint over top of them and, you know, say that you put the decals on and that's all fine if that's what makes you happy, but as far as creating a quality model when you're done with these things, it's going to take a lot of patience and a lot of practice, and there's several steps that need to be followed to make that happen. So I'm going to probably have to break this up into two parts on the tutorial, but just to keep them fairly short. But what we're working with is one of the companies that makes these decals is Archer, who was the originals to do it. And what they are is they're little spots of resin that's just on decal paper, on clear decal paper, and they are raised. You can feel them. I'll hold them up here. This is actually from Micro Mart, is where I got these from, and you get a lot more from Micro Mart, but the difference is these are a lot bigger than what you would get from Archer. So if, you know, true scale is something you're looking for, you may want to look into the Archers, which you get a lot less for a lot more money, but they are a very quality item. But on this sheet you get some round pattern rivets, you get some louvers, there's a resin grid there. I think that's probably for the armor modelers, and then various decals, different patterns of your rivets, double row of rivets, staggered double row. So, you know, you get a lot there. Now, there's been a lot of talk on the proper application of these things. If you read the directions that Archer or Micro Mart give you, they're going to say put them over a glossy surface. And the reason for that is to keep the decal from silvering. A lot of you guys that build, especially in the model trucks, I noticed many of your decals are silvered because of improper application. That is a fairly easy thing to overcome and to make look right, and I brought that up because if you're going to try to use these rivet decals, you're going to end up with the same problem. And like I say, if that's, you know, if you want to build a truck with these on it, and, you know, if it silvers and you can see the edge and stuff like that and you're still happy with it, then, you know, that's all good. But for people like myself that do competitions and stuff, we cannot have any decal silvering, we cannot have the edge of the carrier paper showing. So there's just a lot more involved in our side of it. But I'm going to show you some of the techniques that I've learned to work with these things here and point out some things along the way. So I've already got a strip of these cut off this sheet here, and when I cut these out, I use a brand new number 11 blade in my X-Acto, and I cut them very close to the raised rivet, which eliminates a lot of the carrier paper. So I'm going to set these out of the way now, and along with this, the first procedure I'm going to show you is actually doing this onto your bare kit plastic. And we're going to be using a little bit of Tamiya polishing compound, the blue, which is the mid-grade, and a couple soft brushes. I usually have a couple various sizes of them, a pair of tweezers and the number 11 holder, and a paper towel to wipe stuff off with. So we have a Peterbilt 378 hood here. It's in the white kit plastic, just the way it comes out of the box. One of the things that I do, if you are going to spray with an airbrush as far as your primers and your paints, this would be the way that I would recommend putting these decals on. If you're going to be painting with a can, I do not recommend this procedure here because a can puts so much paint on the surface, especially when it comes to primers, that you are pretty much going to kill all of this raised detail, and you may get a little hint of it showing, but in all reality it's kind of going to be a waste of time if you hide most of the rivet detail, because that's why you're actually putting them on the model, to show the rivets. So but this is the procedure that I'm going to show for people that want to use an airbrush on their models, and that's airbrushing the primer and the paint and the clear coat. I take a little bit of the Tamiya polish, and you don't need much, it's got a little spot on the rag there, and just bring that in and buff it around just like you normally would if you were buffing out paint. And what this will do is actually get all of the mold release or oil off your fingers or anything like that off the kit plastic, and it will also give you a much glossier finish to put the decal on. And the reason for the glossy finish is to keep the decal from silvering, and what that means is if you have a rough finish with a lot of texture to it, like orange peel in the paint, when you put the decal over it, the carrier paper cannot adhere down into the valleys of that orange peel, and when it does not adhere, it shows up as almost like a whitish appearance under your decal, and if you do that up to the stage of clear coat, you will never get rid of it. So I'm just buffing this back and forth pretty lightly here, and it'll probably be hard to see on the camera. I don't know, we'll hold it up here and see what we got. But one side of that hood is buffed out, and the other side is just a bare kit plastic. From what I see here on my end, it's definitely a lot shinier on the one side than it is on the other. So once you have that done, and another thing on this, if anybody is worried, you can primer and paint over top of the Tamiya polishing compounds. I have done it. Most of my builds, if I'm using the Tamiya stuff and I'm buffing out something and it's not quite the way I want it, I'll go back in and do some repaint over top of it, or touch up stuff with the airbrush, and you can go over top of it. Don't do this with a wax, because the wax is not going to allow your paint to adhere to the surface. So definitely make sure you stay with some type of a rubbing compound or a polishing compound. So we have that buffed out now. I'm just going to figure out the length that I need here roughly. I'm not going to calculate this down to the exact dimension, but I'm going to cut that off pretty much right where it'll go front to back on the hood. And I have a cup of water sitting over here out of the view of the camera that I'm going to drop this into. It's just plain water. And I'll bring up a couple of things as we go along. When you cut the decals that close, when you cut them off of your sheet and you're cutting them that close to the rivets, you have to be very careful with keeping these things straight. It's a very thin little decal that you're putting on, and it can get very twisted out of shape and messed up. So look forward to that happening some. You just have to kind of throw that one away and start over if that happens. But the next thing that I do is take a little bit of the micro set from Micro Scale Industries, and I will run a small amount of that where I want to put this decal. And like I say, I know these hoods don't have decals on them. I'm just doing this, using this hood as a reference and just to do the tutorial with. This actually come out of the parts box. So I have a nice coat of the micro set down on there now. Now we're going to take the tweezers and bring the decal out of the water. And there's the decal. And then it's just like any other decal. Let me get a little bit of this excess micro set off of here. There we go. And you just want to take your decal and drop it down, get it roughly in the neighborhood of where you want it, and slide the backing paper out. And another thing that I use a lot when I'm setting decals like this, especially these small ones, is I'll use just a regular old toothpick, because it helps me go in and get a hold of the decal and slide it around to where I want it. And in this case here, it's a little bit easier because you have the line of the hood to line the decal up against. But like I say, it will get wavy on you, so you have to be very careful with your placement of this to make sure that it looks right and that you've actually got it in a straight line, because your rivets aren't going to be wavy as when they put the tabs together. They're going to be pretty much in a straight line. So I'll hold this up here and let you see it. This is the rivet decals installed over the micro set, and you can see that I just followed the line of the hood there. Alright, the next step you do with that is take a little bit more of your micro set, and you just want to run a bead right over top of the decal, and this will help the decal pull down nice and tight. Now once you put this on, leave it alone, don't touch it, because if you start trying to move this around and mess with it, it will distort the decal. So that's pretty much all there is to putting it over top of the kit plastic. And that, like I say, that's if you're using an airbrush to do your primers and your paints. If you are using a spray can on primer and paint, I do not recommend this procedure here. But that's pretty much all there is to it. You would set this to the side, let it dry, and then proceed on with your, primering and painting and whatever you have to do. I also recommend having the majority of, well, actually all of your body work done, and having as close to perfect as you can get it, because you cannot sand over top of these. Once you hit these with a piece of sandpaper, the rivet detail is gone, so you're right back to where you started. So that's pretty much all there is to installing the rivet decals onto the bare kit plastic for airbrush use. Since we are about 13 minutes on the video now, I'm going to go ahead and do a part 2, which will be for you guys that are going to use a spray can. And I'll touch on a few more pointers in that video. So I'll do that here next, so stay tuned for that one. And I thank you for watching this one, and we'll talk to you later.